Hey everybody, Barry here again. Got some more stuff done last night.
Like that.
That looks much better. I'm really excited with how the engine bay is coming together. I know it looks dirty and gross. I didn't really clean anything, just sprayed some everything cleaner on it. Done, just to get the grease out of it. I'm not painting it until I know this engine is good this time. So what I'm going to be doing next is I'm going to do my switch panel inside the van.
I'll turn on a light. But here is what I have had set up just for now. Just a push button set up there. This here was for the line lock, but that I don't like that. It looks dumb. So what I'm going to use is my radio. This thing doesn't work. It won't pick up a signal. Nothing works. So I'm going to make up my own plate to go right here with just like a couple buttons or whatever. So I guess I'll just start tearing it off. I think this just snaps off. Unless I break it. Ooh, there we go. And there's 4 screws that I can make my little mounting points out of. And I'm going to try to make it just as flush as that was before. So I'm going to take this apart and see if I can get something made up. Alright, so I haven't had this thing apart before. But let's see how it works. It looks pretty straightforward. Ow, that's probably not going to be very straightforward, but yeah. There we go. That was easy. Now it looks like I might have pretty much uninterrupted access behind the dash. I'll start making my switch panel. Should be fairly easy because I can just make it to match this. It looks like this bezel actually clips into the radio here and over on this side. So I have to see if it's going to clip into the dash or not. I might have to glue it in. Let's see what we have. Oh, nope. Fits like a glove. And it does snap in also. So when I cut out all my steel, I want it to be one nice fluid piece. So that it's not weld here, there. I'd like to be able to just get a flat piece of metal to come across here and then bend it in the shape that it needs to be. I can just use it in a vise. That's easy. So I'm going to measure the lengths of everything that I need. So we have a 1/2 inch for the flange, 1 inch for the height. So that's 1.5 inches here, 1.5 inches over here. So that's 3 inches. And then the total length, we're looking at 8 1/4. So that's going to be 11 1/4 inches. So I'll probably just do 11 1/2 just to make sure that I have enough for the radius on the bend. And when I have it done, then I can cut off any little bit of excess. Also, we can see here that the flange itself is the same width as the faceplate. And there is a spot that kind of steps out and goes a bit wider down here, but we don't need to worry about that because the faceplate width itself is what I actually need. Because if I get this down here closer again, it's going to be flush with the bezel here. And the width of it, or the height, I guess you could say, we're looking at, I'll do it on the flange here, 3 3/4. Maybe a little tiny bit bigger. But about 3 3/4, so that'll be fine there. And here's another piece of shelving, which I love using. Stuff that I've cut out my metal flowers for casts with. So I've got one nice straight edge right here. That is just about the length that I need. I need 11 1/2, and it is just about 11 1/2, so that's fine. And then I'll cut it down here, my 3 3/4, run it across. Then I have my piece. Well, here's the piece. I'm not sure what you'll call it. Inlay? And it seems to fit fine in here. Looks okay to me. It's got a little bit of a gap, but nothing serious. Let's try it in the van. Alrighty, let's see. A little bit wide over here. Oh, wait, no, maybe not. Let's see, let's see, let's see. Well, it's got a gap here. I've got to move it over. I guess that would be because this flange here is too wide. That's not a big deal. I'll slice off some on the outside here. And I think then it could potentially work. Let's try it again. Well, it fits much better. Now it's definitely going to take some sizing up before it'll fit in there perfectly, but hey, that's deadly. I think it's going to be fine. I think it's going to be sweet.
Well, now that I know it fits behind the dash, or behind that bezel thing, I can start drilling the holes.
So what I'm going to use is this right here, and somehow figure out, I should be able to use that as some sort of a template. I'll just measure from the center of the hole to center of the hole, transfer it onto here, same on that side, and then drill it out. Okay, let's see if this is going to work or not. I'm trying to do this one-handed because my tripod doesn't fit inside the van. But something. Moment of truth. Will it fit? Will it fit? Will it fit? I don't know. Ooh, it's very close. It's got to move up a little tiny bit. Maybe I'll flip it upside down to see if that works. Okay, I've got my plate turned upside down. Wicked! Little tiny gap up there. It's not serious, but it looks good. Oh, I love it. So, half a plan for this thing. I think I'm going to have my push button start so that I can just turn on the ignition down here, go broom, and I'll have my two-step / transbrake right here. I'll have those actuate at the same time, and probably have my wideband over here, because I don't actually have anywhere to mount that gauge. And it'll just be dangling around like inside the glove locker somewhere, and I don't want that, and it'll be kind of cool to have it up in the dash, I think. Well, now that this thing fits really well, it's time to bring it out and cut some holes in it. That looks pretty cool. Start button, transbrake, wideband, all in reach. All right, so quick rundown. We go ignition on. And transbrake two-step on. Oh, it works so well. Perfect. All right. So now that it's all put together, I think I'm going to go paint it. Because as cool as it is, It looks kind of dumb, it being beige. I'm gonna paint it black.
Well, I have no idea what happened to the paint, but it was not happy.
It's this stuff here. Duplicolor trim and bumper paint is normally awesome. I think it's probably because I have an abundance of chemicals in the air. But, hey, it's gonna have that textured look now. Much cooler. That's what I'm gonna go with anyway. When this dries, I'm gonna pop all the gauges in and see how it looks.
If I don't like it, I will sand it all off again and start over, because that's what I'm good at.
Oh man, I love it. That is so cool. Right now, it's the cleanest part in the whole interior. It's perfect. I love it so much. It's still wet because I'm impatient, but it'll go boom and it'll go blah, 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 blah. And that's pretty much all that's required.
Now that I've got my switch panel made, I'm going to go ahead and hook up starter wires. And maybe the wideband wire. The Transbrake one, I'm going to wait until I get my harness actually put in. But the starter wire isn't going to have to be moved after, so I can do that right now. And I think in the next video, I'm going to see if I can get this thing running. And basically, I'll hook up a couple temporary wires to a battery, get it running, just to make sure that it's going to run okay. So if it doesn't run okay, because I've never had it running before, then that'll give me a chance to pull this thing out before everything is all buttoned up and the bumper is back on and the radiator, coolant, all that stuff. So I think I'll do that first. Now, that won't be in this video because I'm going to finish this one up. The next one can be quite long. I'm going to go ahead and do some wiring. Well, the starter button's hooked up. I didn't bother to do the wideband because I'm not going to need it for the first fire up anyway. But the wires were actually still the correct length from where I had them up on the shifter for the push button temporarily. Now over to like the radio slot or whatever.
And here I've got a bunch of battery cable. This is the real heavy stuff that Kirk Tarrant gave me. Here's some factory cable that went from the battery back to the starter, I think it was. A couple of ground cables here. I'll probably end up reusing some of this. And something here I made a temporary booster cable out of. We got lots of stuff.
So I think I'll probably go ahead and do some of my cables anyway.
Like the one from the block here out to the alternator. The one from the fuse block back to the main fuse block wire here. This is where I'm going to run my main battery cable. And potentially cut the hole for the battery tonight.
That'll, you know, fill up some of the time that I need to finish this video up, but not get into the next one. I think what I'm going to do, so I don't have several cables going into the battery box,
is run one cable from the battery box up to this stud, and then use that stud to run back to my starter on the other side of the engine.
That way, I don't have, say, two cables going in, one for my main power to the fuse block, and the one for main power going to starter. They can just join at that main fuse block.
I think that'll make it a lot easier on me.
I get a little tiny bits of progress at a time, but I guess that's all I can expect.
Main battery cable going over to the starter is done. I'm going to secure it to the frame down here and probably to the engine mount down there so it doesn't rub. Main cable from the fuse block down to the auxiliary fuse block. And now I'm going to do my main battery cables because it's time. So this is what I'm going to use for my ground. It's going to run from this frame ground right here and go down into the battery box. And I'll use this one for my main positive. I'll just chop a section out of it to go from this stud right here, also down to the battery box.
Now I do have 1/2 inch thick foam. It's like anti-fatigue mat or whatever.
It's right here. So this, I'm gonna glue to the inside roof down here. There we go, that's a better view. I'll glue it to the inside roof here so that there's no chance of these posts or the cables touching the top
and grounding out, anything like that, because I don't want that to happen.
So after I get the hole cut in the top,
then I'll go ahead and cut a hole in that mat, glue it up, and well, I'll do my cables first. I'm gonna make the cables long enough
so that I can pull the battery out far enough, probably about right here, so that I can work on the cable ends without any chance of the wrench grounding out on top of the case.
I know not everybody out there is using a metal battery box, but well, that's what I had. A plastic battery box. The ones that we sell here are like massive. They're for RVs, so that wouldn't work at all. It'd just strike the tire. So I'm just working with what I have.
I'm gonna go cut these cables up and make some grounds and some power wires.
Well, I'm getting super excited. I did not expect to get as much done as I did tonight.
Well, so far anyway. Positive cable to the battery, nice and heavy. Comes down here, and yeah, you can't see it. You can see right here that my foam is much smaller than the hole for the battery cable.
So that means that the cable won't be over chafing on the case or anything like that. And where the cable goes down in, I've actually got the case like twisted down so it's like a round edge. Won't be a sharp edge on this battery cable. Also, this cable is like super, super heavy. Not necessarily the cable, but the shield or whatever, the rubber around it.
Here it is. So we can see that that is massive. Like it's only like 00 gauge, but the sheath on it is over 1/8 of an inch thick.
So that means that it's got to go through that massive heavy sheath before it can even get to the cable. So I have no doubts that it's going to be fine.
And we can see that My positive cable is over here, clearly marked with red electrical tape. Negative is right here. And they're out far enough away from the case that when I pull the battery out, I'm not going to ground the wrench off of the case or anything like that. So that's nice and safe. My 1/2 inch foam is on the top of the roof or whatever. I got to glue that still. My battery is over here. Now, for anybody who was asking about the battery kind of bouncing around there and grounding out or whatever, I'll just give you a rundown of what I got done. So, my battery has these two ridges here that you would normally put a lock on that has a bolt going down through it and it kind of nips it in place. Obviously, I don't have that here. So what I have done, as you can see, kind of not very clearly, is a tab welded to the back of the case. And also the same tab welded to the door. And when the door is shut and bolted shut, then those tabs both sort of press on the tabs that are on the battery. This is really hard to explain. But anyway, it's going to lock it here, and it's going to lock it here. Everything is bolted on. I'll put 10 or 15 foot-pounds or something on those bolts, or like a click-click with a 3/8 ratchet, and it's going to be perfectly secure. It's really exciting. Next, I have my solenoid wire for the starter, and I'm going to fuse that. So I did a little bit of research, and a regular GM starter pulls between 10, 15, maybe a little bit more, maybe up as much as 20 amps. And this fuse block that I've got here, this one, each circuit can run 30 amps. So we can see that the cable going to the fuse block is way bigger than it needs to be anyway for this circuit. So, pull off this cute little cover. And I'll be able to crimp on a smaller terminal because that was too big. But I'll be able to put it on here and put in like a 20 amp or a 30 amp fuse. Nice and safe. Nice to have everything fused. Then after I have my starter solenoid wire done, then I can work on my alternator wire. And I'll use probably, the alternator wire is not actually very thick anyway. So I'll probably use this long ground wire here. That's just going to be contrary. This ground wire here is quite long, so I can crimp 2 ends on it and run it from the back of the alternator across here to maybe like this stud right here, because this one here is kind of all used up. Oh man, am I ever warm. I'm glad I was on time lapse. For a couple minutes there I was getting a little bit frustrated, but that's all good. Okay, alternator wire goes across here to the battery. I'll tie it on like right here somewhere. It's well away from the manifold. That's all good. It could probably be prettier, but it is what it is. So every positive, well, except for this one, I should tape that one too, but I have red tape on all of them. I have caught this thing on fire twice now. Once when all the rods came out through, but fire's fire. The second time was when I was at 100% throttle for 90 seconds straight in boost on 2-step, and everything got quite hot. And my manifold burned my coolant temp sensor wire off, burned the crank sensor wire off, burned off the
power steering hose, so all that was a fire. And it'd be really, really nice that if this thing does catch fire and we can't get a hold of it, fire department has to cut the cable.
It'd be nice to know exactly which ones to cut. So that's why I have that done. And I have it done down here for my own preference.
Just so I don't accidentally mix up positive, negative, which I'm sure I won't, but double sure.
All my grounds go to the common ground down here. Here's the battery. Here's directly to the engine block over behind the power steering here. And then the ground right here for the fuse block. This is like 4-gauge wire or 2-gauge.
Now I know that's way bigger than it needs to be, but I have this wire. I don't need to go buy more 8-gauge, and I'll save like $4 a foot or whatever it is. So why not use it? Too big is not gonna hurt.
Obviously I already said alternator wire. This one here goes from this auxiliary fuse panel back to the main fuse panel, down to the battery, over to the starter.
Exciting. I think I have all the cables done.
So I should be able to hook this battery up and crank the engine over.
I'm almost done, but I am going to try that really quick first. Well, let's try and see how well everything here works. See what kind of space restraints are under. It's going to be tight, I already know that much, but if I don't have to redo anything here, it's a win. Oh, there goes the bolt. Nut. Oh, getting close. There's the positive. Yeah, super tight spot. Now the negative. Oh, I hear something moving in there. So, I guess we got lots of room inside the battery box on top of it. Yeah. So, safety check. Make sure everything here fits well and doesn't strike anything, because we don't need that. Now, let's see how well this works. So I'm just gonna pull the cables up a little tiny bit at a time. Oh, my ground is not quite tight enough. Okay, move this a little tiny bit at a time. Now this is the ground right here. I'm not concerned if it hits the case because it's a ground. The positive, on the other hand, we do not want to hit the case. Yeah. Well, it's definitely tight. Oh, it's in there. It's got about a ½ inch between the top of the post and the actual foam. So if the battery does move around at all, it's not going to touch anywhere. And I have some left over, so I may put some across here also, just to be sure. Cover closes. Done. Well, there we go. Battery is installed. All the cables are installed. Let's try the starter button.
All right, let's check the starter. Yeah, we have cranking.
So obviously it sounds like it doesn't have any compression because there's no plugs in it, but it cranks. I like it. So that's all I'm doing for tonight because I got to go pick my girls up some supper and get them to bed in a little bit. And I'm coming back here tomorrow and I am getting this thing running unless something goes substantially wrong, and then I guess I won't. But I wanted to thank everybody again for showing up, watching the videos, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you want to check out my Patreon, it is patreon.com/stationroadratrods, just general support. I do have some marks that I'm working on, so hopefully I'll get that done sooner rather than later, and you guys can check that out. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good day.